previously.
Ibeto is from the very popular industrial, or business town of Neri. In that part of the country, you don't just suddenly jam wealth as a spare parts dealer. I mean, as far back as the late 80s and early 90s, Ibeto was already manufacturing batteries, if I remember at the time.
And then there was an importation ban. And with that, those who had connections were able to take advantage of that. And one of such businesses would have been the Ibeto business.
Around the same time in Lagos, another young trader was taking his first steps. With a modest 500,000 naira loan from his uncle, Aliko Dangote began importing sugar and rice.
This guy had been in trading business as in his 20s and controlling markets.
You found out that your ship of rice came and it was stuck in the ports because it became contraband. Dangote was the sole importer and distributor of sugar. He had no experience in cement.
Acquired, control of cement business.
With Obajana and Benue Cement Company under his control, Aliko Dangote was no longer just a businessman. He had become a force. The market bowed to him. But in Port Harcourt, Cletus Ibeto was flooding the market with imported cement, cheap, fast, and in quantities large enough to shake the entire industry. To Dangote, this wasn't competition, it was war.
Ibeto cement don't know.
As word spread of Ibeto's low-priced cement, the market reacted instantly. Distributors hesitated, prices wobbled. Dangote's dominance, carefully constructed brick by brick, began to tremble.
The competition there was pretty stiff because Ibeto could compete by lowering prices, whereas Dangote couldn't lower prices that much because of his cost of production. Remember, he was producing in Nigeria. Dangote was importing more than he was producing. He was also setting up his plant at that time, so competition was pretty stiff.
Some other guys would tell you, well, maybe there wasn't much of a competition. It was probably more of protection, essentially protection market share for someone like Dangote, because Ibeto was fairly just new into that space at the time, at least considering the kind of scale that he was trying to operate in. And so for a Dangote, couldn't have been a major competition as such, but he was essentially protecting his market share.
As the pressure mounted, the cement war drew blood early. Lafarge, already wounded by Dangote's rise, petitioned the Obasanjo administration, claiming Ibeto's license gave him an unfair advantage. And in 2005, the government struck hard. Ibeto's warehouses were sealed.
You need to recall cement imports were a big deal at the time. And so when Dangote started manufacturing cement, people thought that this was him coming in to basically usurp the establishment, and he's basically had this around him. People always thought that he was someone that you couldn't compete with, and he was always a very fierce competitor. So the gist around town was that perhaps he was the one behind the closure. So yeah, that was how it was perceived. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that's really what it was, but that's how it was perceived at the time.
What looked like a bureaucratic misunderstanding soon revealed a darker truth. Lafarge may have fired the first shot, but Dangote's influence helped load the gun. Ibeto soon realized he wasn't fighting corporations anymore. He was fighting power. 6 ships, loaded with 180,000 metric tons of cement, sat stranded at sea. Every day cost him millions. Every delay pushed him closer to collapse. License revoked and warehouse sealed. Ibeto's government connections couldn't save him.
The factory that he was building, which was not yet completed, and his warehouse was shut down, couldn't import, and no reasons were given what you would say that, and And the truth about it is that if you have contravened a regulation, there's a process that you must follow. And the process is simple. Okay, someone makes a report. You've broken a rule. So the regulatory agencies would, yes, they have the right to go there, seal it, so they can do their investigations. And I don't think those investigations should last, give or take, based on whatever the petition is. I don't think it should take more than maybe 90 days if you're serious about it. But we found out that Ibeto Cement was shut for almost 2 years. And at that point, every other player, which was Dangote mostly then, had consolidated on the market. Was it fair? I don't think it was. I don't think it was level playing field for everybody. And if the president in 2000 or 2001 had promised us that we're not going to have a situation of one person owning practically everything and creating a monopoly, then he didn't do that. That's my opinion.
The punishment was too severe, too coordinated, too efficient. Analysts traced the silence back to Abuja's inner circle. No one said it publicly, but everyone understood it privately. Lafarge complained, but Dangote executed. The outcome spoke louder than any accusation. Dangote's empire grew stronger. Obajana accelerated. Competitors were suffocated. In Nigerian business, the author of a storm is often revealed by who benefits from the rain.
The impact on Ibeto was that nobody seemed to know what the problem was. He himself didn't know. He was asking. Nothing came out of it, to the extent of him having to write the president of the country to intervene.
In desperation, Ibeto wrote to President Olusegun Obasanjo not once but twice, pleading for intervention. In one letter, he begged for fatherly mercy. In another, he warned that all he had built was crumbling, but the silence from Abuja was loud.
Of course, as a businessman, you have to appeal. First, you appeal to the regulators, which is what was done. But of course, when you appeal to the regulators and they are not listening, then you should be able to appeal to the overall boss who manages the economy. And I think my reasons for saying this is simple. One, let's remember that those letters were appealing to the president to take a look into what is happening to my business, basically. Practically pleading, let me do my business, because you had people who were being employed. You have shut down his warehouse and the factory that was being built. Investors who had put money into it were asking you what's going on. Banks that you are taking financing from are going to be asking, are we going to meet those deadlines? So for me, it signifies authority first and foremost. But like I said, if authority doesn't look at the economy from a level playing ground perspective, and you always hear these days, the ease of doing business, this for me really reflects to investor confidence in Nigeria about the ease of doing business.
Cement became scarce, prices climbed, and ordinary Nigerians felt the squeeze.
The price is too expensive, it's too high. Customers are complaining about the price.
What began as a fight between giants was now reshaping daily life.
When you look at how long Ibeto's business was shut down for, one, you went there, you shut it down first. Yes, there's a petition, so you shut it down. Then it now becomes, okay, based on these petitions, what are offenses?
Even if I have lapses, you come and do your inspection and give me a time frame for me to correct them.
What do we need to do? How do we correct them? Nothing was being done. I was just shut down. Let's also remember that human beings are employed and they are going to be out of employment, because if you're not making money, you can't pay staff. Supply chain gaps will start to happen, or will be inefficiencies in the system will create major gaps that needs to be filled. It's so difficult. Sometimes it takes months, if not years, to fill gaps. It then translates into others taking up that space
and you losing out on your market, losing business as a whole. I lose my market, someone else fills it up, and for 2 years I lose that market. Of course, what you have done is that you have not only disrupted my business, you've disrupted an economic flow of the economy of the country, because they could result in shortages. In my own opinion, I do think it really affected the infrastructure development process in Nigeria, because all of a sudden cement prices shot up and it has never come down since then.
When Yar'Adua succeeded him, a reprieve came. Import waivers and tax breaks that briefly brought Ibeto back into the game. But the market had shifted. Dangote's Obajana plant was roaring, policy favored local production, and Ibeto was cornered. In the end, he sold his facilities at a fraction of their value. The importer, who once stood as Dangote's greatest rival, was first off the field. The cement wars had claimed their first casualty. But Ibeto wasn't finished. Not yet. To reclaim relevance, he needed what Dangote had mastered: production, not importation. And so, he made his boldest move yet. In 2011, he acquired Eastern Bulk Cement Company, the key to Nigeria's oldest cement plant, Nigercem in Nkalago, Ebonyi State.
At the time, Nigercem, which was the company, was owned by several states in the southeast in conjunction with the federal government. So the federal government sold its own stake in Nigercem, while on the floor of Nigerian Stock Exchange, but most of the state governors or the state governments in the southeast did not sell, and so, but of course, and then by not doing that, the facilities started deteriorating, and there was no money to be made, and some southeast states sold off. But Nkalago was in Ebonyi State, so I think it was one of those assets that was symbolic to that state.
The plant was dead, silent, abandoned, but if Ibeto could revive it, he could finally challenge Dangote from the east.
Well, to be honest, I don't really know what sort of threats he would have represented, except for maybe trampling on vested interest. And so when Ibeto decided to make a foray into buying in Nkalago, it then turned into a challenge, a problem, because the sitting governor at the time, Martins Elechi, did not want Ibeto to acquire that asset.
Elechi believed Ibeto would be no different. His administration resisted fiercely, revoking land certificates, dethroning traditional rulers who backed Ibeto, and waging a public war against him.
But there were some politics playing around at the time. Martins Elechi, who was the governor, wanted somebody else to succeed him as governor, and not David Umahi, who was his vice at the time, or his deputy governor at the time. And so it kind of looks like David Umahi aligned with Ibeto, or Ibeto basically ran to David Umahi. And so that now made the battle for acquiring that asset even a lot more difficult for Ibeto. So, and then Ibeto also sort of aligned with the citizens or the people from the community as well, and then also pitting the community against Martins Elechi in the battle for that asset. And so it kind of just looked like it was also the same playbook that you saw with Aliko Dangote. That was the same kind of playbook that you would see pan out as well with Ibeto and acquiring that asset.
But Ibeto had become a veteran of political battles. He fought back with media, with community support, with influence. Rumors swelled of him secretly funding political enemies.
And so the battle raged on, and it was so bad that at some point I think there were stories that some of the community leaders were essentially deposed or removed from seats by the state governor because of the jostling for that asset. At the end of the day, what then happened was,
when Elechi finally lost control of the political landscape and David Umahi rose to power, the tide turned. Umahi sided with Ibeto. Roadblocks fell. Najisam's revival seemed possible again.
David Umahi ended up winning that election, and then Martin Elechi faced AFCC, as is often the case when you have political rivals fight. And we all know who David Umahi is today. He was governor of Ebonyi State for about 8 years, and then now is the current minister. Minister for Works. So, and then Martin Zelechi, no longer as powerful as he was. So Ibeto aligned very well, and so immediately David Umahi came into power. He essentially, made the acquisition for Ibeto a lot easier.
Politics feeds off business, and I will explain that. Who are the ones who 8 out of 10 times you bankroll political actions? Of course, because many of the people who turn out to be leaders of so many countries, they don't have that kind of funding in their pockets. So of course you reach out to different partners who would put monies into your campaign and all. So it's the way you look at America and say, oh, lobbyists. Of course they contribute to politicians being in power so that they can lobby for policies that could be favorable to their businesses without compromising the overall economic perspective of the country.
But the landscape had transformed. Dangote Cement was no longer a Nigerian titan. It was an African empire. Obajana expanded. Ibeshe launched. Revenue soared from 61.9 billion naira in 2008 to 800 billion naira by 2018. Stock market value exploded to 3.6 trillion naira. Meanwhile, Ibeto carried the scars of 2005 to 2007, scars that cost him billions and years of market presence. He returned stronger, but the market had outgrown him. Dangote now controlled capacity, pricing power, and policy influence.
What is interesting is that till today, there's still arguments over who owns that asset or not. There's still some people who believe that Ibeto shouldn't have bought that asset or does not own the asset. But at the time, it was obvious that he had won it. He had won that battle against Martin Elechi. So it was a very interesting time as well. And then it was pretty important because it was all about controlling the Southeast and who was controlling the cement manufacturing in the Southeast. And so that asset was very important in Ibeto's strategic play. Remember that he had been burned because he was focused mostly on importing, and so owning a manufacturing plant was significant to his entire business model and his re-emergence as at least as a cement power in the Southeast and South region of the country.
In a market where guts and governments determine survival, Ibeto had guts, but lacked the government machinery Dangote had mastered.
If we do think that sectors should grow, then I think we should, when you read the book, Nigeria's Corporate Stories, we should learn from those lessons and actually create a situation that we are always asking for, the ease of doing business. And the ease of doing business is not just a document. It must show in policies, it must show in regulations, it must show in transparency. And it's not just cement, it's across board. So we need to change this theory or this thinking, not theory, this thinking, in my own opinion, of protectionism, which is how I see it, and create a level of playing grounds for more people to come into the market. They might as well just protect the whole system so that those who contribute the highest to the GDP of Nigeria about 50 to 60% of it SMEs, who protects them. And reading Nigeria's corporate stories and with reference to cement was, this is what I think should happen. Policies should be transparent. Policies should focus on building a system that would make the economy thrive better and create consumer spending that will continually boost the economy.
Well, in Nigeria and in sub-Saharan Africa, especially for manufacturing businesses, where cost of capital is very, very high, business tend to be quite brutal when it comes to competing, especially for locally owned businesses. People want to protect their market share. You want to be as close as possible to government officials. You don't want regulations to kick your business out, because you could be a beautiful bride and one day, and then the next day you're basically just kicked out. So it is very, very stiff. Power play is very critical to maintaining your market share. It's critical to even accessing new markets in a country where, if you wanted to basically sell in markets within your country, there's certain stakeholders that you should know, that you should walk through. So it requires a whole lot of power. Power in the corridors of power, no pun intended. That is also very important. So it's a very, very complicated and dynamic play, and there's no way you can come out tops if there isn't any power tussle. And that's what we've seen, not just in cement, but in most manufacturing businesses that we've seen in Nigeria.
In Nigeria's cement business, there is no victory without power and no glory without government.